Hey, what's up, everybody? We are going to get live here. We're going to get started here in just a minute, giving everybody an opportunity to jump in. Just want to make sure the people over on Instagram are able to know that if you DM me the word YouTube, you will get a link to the live. So if you're on Instagram, come on over to the YouTube channel. If you're on YouTube, what's up? This is your second time seeing me today on YouTube. Super excited about this. As we jump into it today, here's what we're going to be covering. We're going to be covering some of the mistakes, biggest lessons I've learned in entrepreneurship, primarily in the real estate investing game, being a wholesaler, being a fix and flipper, being a buy and hold investor, doing creative financing, raising private money. I've been able to go out and have a lot of experience over the last 5 years doing everything from door knocking, putting sticky notes on people's front doors, cold calling, hiring and managing an acquisitions team, raising private capital. I basically have done everything except for physically go to my own properties. Like that's the one thing that I have not done because most of my business runs virtually. And it's so funny that I talk to a lot of newer entrepreneurs, newer investors, and I start to see the commonality between those who succeed and those who fail. And to give you the short bit of it, the people that succeed, what we have in common is this ability to take a loss and turn it into a lesson, this ability to really turn the most negative situations into the reasons for us to succeed, into, quite frankly, fuel. And so I want to talk about this and give some examples of some of the hardest mistakes, I guess you would say, I made that in the moment. I'll be honest, guys, like in the moment, some of these mistakes did break me momentarily. And they were opportunities for me to throw in the towel, opportunities for me to quit. And because I didn't quit, I'm able to live the life I have today. I'm able to have the success I have today. I'm able to have the reputation and track record, which I'll talk about because your reputation matters so much. And what's up? I see Norman in the chat. Good to see you, Norman. Dude, Norman, congratulations, by the way. I saw that you just got an RV park under contract. So huge shout out to you, Norman. You're doing a phenomenal freaking job. And so let's talk about this, guys. Like let's dive into this. And so where I want to start us off is with the first, I guess I would say this was my biggest financial plunder, my biggest financial mistake that I made as a real estate investor. And this was, I want to say, in the year 2023. I'm sorry, I don't remember the date exactly, but trust me when I say I do remember the lesson. My partner came to me. At this time, we had 5 flips going on. We had 5 active flips, and we were in process of refinancing 2 properties. So we had just picked up 2 properties that were BRRRR properties. In other words, we were buying them, renovating them, rehabbing it, renting it out, then refinancing to keep it in our long-term rental. And so at this moment in time, this was the most amount of projects we had ever managed. We were used to managing maybe 1 to 2 properties or projects at a given time. And now we've got 7 of these projects live happening all at the same time. And one of these projects was a property, 1231 North 32nd Street. And I remember that address because I hate that property. I hope I never see that property ever again. This property was a fix and flip, or was supposed to be a fix and flip. And I have rules that I put in place to help me to succeed in business, rules that were taught to me by mentors who had way more experience than me, who have been doing this for a lot longer. And they said, Marlon, when you get into fix and flips, and if any of you are going to be doing any sort of renovation or any sort of fix and flips, they said, when you're doing fix and flips, there's a couple of things you want to watch out for. The first is you want to watch out for the term unique. Anytime somebody brings a property to you and you're a flipper and they bring you a unique property, basically you want to train yourself to run for the hills, because the issue with unique properties is unique properties are more difficult to get comps for. Unique properties are not cookie cutter. Unique properties are more unpredictable. See, when you do flips and you're getting into a business, you want to be able to sell what you know the market already wants. See, I have a saying, I want to sell you what you already want to buy. And so when properties are cookie cutter, when the 3 bedroom, 2 bath that looks like every other 3 bedroom, that 2 bath that's sold in the neighborhood for the last 3 months is out there and I can flip that, then I can predict easily what my potential profit will be. I can predict easily what the marketplace wants to see on a finished product, the sort of paint, sort of colors, like all of that stuff. And so I run when someone says, "Hey, this house is unique. It's the only one like it," because there's nothing else to compare it to. And unless you're in the place of doing luxury flips and you're in a luxury market and that's your niche, don't focus on the uniques. And so my partner brings me this deal, and my partner's a great guy, and it's the first time I've ever seen him excited, get animated about a property. And again, once we start letting emotions into our decision making, things do start to change. And he says, like, man, this project would be so cool. It's such a unique property. There's that word, such a unique property. Like, I really want to flip it. And again, I never saw him get animated. And so I was like, man, it's kind of cool to see him get all excited about this project, to get excited about this deal. So I agreed. I made a decision to go against my instincts, to go against what I was taught, to go against what my mentors had given me as valuable information I paid a lot of money for. I went against it. I broke my own rules, right? You don't want to break your rules. And as a result of breaking the rules, guess what happened? We bought this property, and this property was a full gut. Now, here's what I didn't take into account. The numbers were there. The numbers, we were buying the property for about $30,000. We had to put $10,000 additional on top of that as a performance clause because we were buying it from the city. So all in, we're at $40,000 on the property, and we were anticipating the renovation being somewhere in the ballpark of 110 to $130,000. And so let's call it 130,000 for simple math. $130,000 for renovation plus $40,000 on the purchase, plus call it another $10,000 in holding costs. We're at $180,000. On the back end, however, we were looking at comps on ARV of this property of being around $275,000. So we're looking at potentially a six-figure flip here. We're looking at a potential six-figure deal, but here's where the mistake was made. Here's where the overlaps or the oversight and judgment was made. It's our first time taking on a full job. Also, we have active jobs going on that aren't finished and are slightly behind on schedule. And so we have a crew that's not performing at tip top. And we decided, instead of getting our systems more dialed in at this season, we were going to add not only a new project, but now the biggest project we've ever had ever before. Right? You guys see where this is going? See, we were starting to get too greedy. Right? We were making money, but we were starting to get way too greedy and not cleaning up and perfecting, right? Like, this is the kid who shows up to the gym and is feeling real good and real confident and starts loading the barbell up with too much weight too soon. And this is what we started doing. We started loading the weight up with too much weight too soon. And unfortunately, here's what we discovered. One, full gut renovations require a massive undertaking from a project management coordination standpoint, because you need certain things to already be finished so that the next guys could get in and come and work. And if one person's off, that throws the entire deal. It throws the entire project off track. And once you're off track and you're off schedule, it starts to affect your other projects. And so we were learning this lesson the hard way, that our project management skills were trash. They were absolute garbage. And we didn't have a professional project manager. It was just us trying to figure this out. And so what started to happen was the stress of now our almost completed deals getting slowed down by this new behemoth of a deal. And this new behemoth of a deal, because it's a full gut, every time we open up a wall, every time we go, we're finding more things that we didn't first recognize. And so our budget is starting to go up higher. And it got to the point where, funny enough, we were still in the green, right? As far as the ARV, as far as there's enough equity in the deal. But I started to learn this lesson: the stress of having too many projects on non On us as operators, the stress was actually hurting us more and causing us more pain to the point where one day my partner calls and says, "Dude, I'm done." Now he's not quitting the business, but he was just done. He was kaput. He was finished. He'd given up. And as a result of him giving up, remember, this was a deal I already doubted from the beginning. I wasn't fighting. I wasn't here to fight for the deal because it was his deal. I was doing it because he wanted to do it. And so we ended up giving up on this deal. Although there was plenty of equity, we ended up giving up on the deal, but not giving up on it right away. We gave up on it after having invested, get this, about $55,000 of our own money into it. So this deal, we lost. But at the end of the day, it was just shy of 60 grand. In fact, guys, I made a full video doing the entire deal breakdown on my YouTube channel. So go and look for that later. I did a full video on this one particular deal because everyone always wants to talk about the highlights on real estate. And it's cool. Like I've made six-figure deals. I've made, $20,000 checks, $30,000 checks, that kind of stuff. And that's cool. But the reality is there are going to be some deals that you lose on. And this was one of my biggest losses, a 60 grand loss. And I'm not talking a potential profit. I'm talking money that we spent that is now out of our pockets, that is gone forever. And the lesson I learned here, right? And this is the lesson I want you to take away is play to the season that you're in. Yes, you want to expand. Yes, you want to grow. Yes, you want to get better. But the season I was in, our plate was already filled, right? It's like going to the buffet and your plate's already filled and you're still trying to add more food. Take care of what's already on your plate currently and do that with all of your energy, all of your attention, all of your focus so that you can better refine yourself, so that you can get better. And so later on, your capacity to work, your capacity to build will actually be so much more. And so that was one of the big lessons I learned. And so now when I look at deals, I look at, does this deal fit into my season? And when I say fit into my season, I want it to be slightly more than I can handle, right? Like not so much that it overwhelms and breaks us, but just enough that it causes us to step up, to become me 2.0, to become Marlon 2.0, to grow and expand into the opportunity, right? And there's that beautiful balance, again, just like working out in the gym, where you want to go heavier, but you don't go heavier by an extra 100 pounds. You go heavier by adding an extra 2.5, an extra 5 pounds to the barbell. And that's where you're at. And you recognize this is the season you're in. This is a marathon. It is not a sprint. Please write that down in your notepad. If you're taking notes, that this game of entrepreneurship is a marathon. It's not a sprint. Okay, that was lesson number one. Now, lesson number two, that first lesson I've shared before publicly. I mentioned I made a YouTube video about it. And this second lesson, I honestly, I don't share as much because this one, quite frankly, it hurt. It, okay, so it's what, 2022? It's early 2022. I had just recently moved out to Arizona. I'm living with my roommate Luciano at the time. And shout out to Luciano. I'm working on wholesaling, and I mean, I am grinding to get deals done. I've got a team that they're depending on me to go out and get deals done. And somebody reaches out to me to JV a deal with them. And at that time, at that season, some of you know, and you might remember what I was doing back then. I was selling properties to hedge funds. Hedge funds were buying at high rates, but it was near the tail end of that, and I had just finished off paying down some debts. I still had more debts. I'm not very cash heavy at that season at all. I'm still really establishing my business. We're in like this season of like we're coming through a low point. And so somebody brings a deal to me, and it's in Florida, and I run the numbers and I see that the hedge fund will buy this property and we'll be able to make a healthy spread on it. I forget what the numbers would have been, but probably over $20,000, whatever the case was, maybe even closer to 30, because I think when I was selling to them, I was trying to be higher. And so I agreed to buy this property. Now, the way I was selling these deals to hedge funds is I would buy the property and then I would turn around and simply resell it to them. So it wasn't an assignment. I actually had to close and take ownership of the property. I had to go and raise private capital, put the property and deed it into my name, and then go ahead and sell it. Not a double close, but literally now transact and sell it again. And so I find out what the hedge fund will pay. They agree to buy it. I get into a contract with them. And so once I get that contract, I go back to a wholesaler who's selling the property and I say, listen, I'll buy the property from you. I'll be your buyer. Many of you know if you're assigning a contract to a buyer, what do you have to have your buyer put down? Earnest money deposit. And so in this case, I put down $5,000 of earnest money deposit. At least that's what I agreed to on contract. I agreed to put down $5,000 of EMD. Now, here's the interesting thing, guys. I signed the contract saying I'd put down the EMD, and you know how it is 24 hours to put down the EMD or you forfeit the contract. Well, I put down, I think like $100 EMD just to go and open title, open escrow. But that was about it because that's what I'm used to doing as a wholesaler myself. I typically only put down about $100 when I put a contract under a property under contract. And so I get a email a few days later, about a week or so before we're supposed to close, that the hedge fund is no longer interested in the deal. They did one more drive through and they're now backing out of the deal, which is their right in their contract. They actually, I looked their contract over more thoroughly and they have the right to back out up until the day of close. And so now the hedge fund is backing out of the deal. I've agreed to buy this property, not assign it, not to JV, but to actually buy the property. And so once I learned that the hedge fund's backing out and I have no other buyers because the price is too high to sell to any traditional investors, I pick up the phone and I call the wholesaler and I tell him like, "Hey man, I I'm sorry, like my partner is backed out. I can no longer buy this property." And I mean, he proceeded to lean into me and call me every word under the sun. And guys, like that guy, he's not wrong. In fact, he's a good guy. He's a good, solid wholesaler, solid dude. I'm in some communities with him, but he was rightfully pissed off because I told him I would perform. I told him I would buy this property, and then I did not buy it. Now, I did my best to come to him as soon as possible to give him the opportunity to go and sell it to somebody else. But here's what happened. When I told him I was going to buy, he went back to the seller and told the seller, "We're good. You can begin packing. You can begin getting ready for your next life. You are taken care of." And so now the seller had started to prepare herself to move on to the next chapter. And now I'm telling him that he's going to have to basically call her back and tell her the deal's off, right? That money that you were counting on, that life that you already started building, we've got to crush it down because we can't perform. And so after he is finished yelling at me, he says, "Okay, well, you still need to deposit the remainder of your $4,900 for earnest money deposit." Now, guys, here's the interesting thing. I don't think I've ever told this story to anybody. The contract stated that if I didn't deposit the full earnest money deposit within 24 hours, my contract was null and void. Right? He would have the right to assign it to somebody else, and I would forfeit whatever little money I did put down, being that $100 in that case. Now that we're well past that 24-hour period and I'm not going to be the buyer, do I have to put down the earnest money deposit? Right? You guys tell me in the chat. Do I have to? 24 hours has passed. I didn't put the earnest money deposit down in full. Now that I'm not buying the property, do I still have to put down the earnest money deposit? You guys tell me in the chat. What do you think? Norman says no. Raphael says no. All right, Hardcore Creative says no. And so Stephen Crawford says no, technically, right? I love that answer. No, technically. And you guys are all absolutely right. Technically, I do not have to put down that earnest money deposit. However, here's the thing. When I spoke to him on the phone and I agreed to originally purchase, I told him I'd put the $5,000 down. I said it. I said I would deposit the $5,000 of non-refundable earnest money deposit. And so now, even though we're in the season, and at this season of my life, let me kind of paint a picture for you guys. I had just finished paying down some other debts, and like I just moved out to Arizona a few months earlier. Like, guys, like that $5,000, I had probably had about like a little like 5,700, something like that, close to $6,000 in my bank account at that point. So that $5,000 was not chump change. That $5,000 was not nothing. That $5,000 represented 90% of my liquidity right then and there. And fuck, guys, like it sucked. It sucked because he started to tell me, like, listen, man, if you don't put this money down, one, you're screwing this woman over. Two, you're screwing me over. And three, like, here's the interesting thing. He's like, I've seen your content, I've seen your stuff, I've seen your posts inside the communities, and you always present yourself as a solid dude who does the right thing. But like, I will just know that all of that's BS. And guys, whew, that hurt, that stung because he was right. I'm just being honest, right? Like, that's not my proudest moment. The fact that I was even there contemplating and, like, in my mind thinking like, "Well, I don't need to put this down," and, like, I'm fighting with the technicalities now. Like, I'm thinking more like a lawyer, like a businessman, like, "Well, you know what? Like, screw it." Like, he should have gotten the earnest money deposit from me within the first 24 hours, but at the end of the day, he didn't make me speak the words that I spoke. He didn't make me say anything. I said what I said. And so I was faced with a decision. I can either honor my word, I can be the man who I present myself as, which is a man who does what he says and means what he says and says what he means, or I can be a shrewd businessman like everybody else on the planet that says, I'm only looking out for me, screw everybody else, and I got you on a technicality. And so what did I do? Before I even gave myself the option to think about it, I Zelled him the remaining $4,900. And he said to me on the phone, he said, "You are the man that I thought you were." And I said, "Thanks." I hung up the phone and I sat in my bedroom and I cried. Just sat there and I cried. I cried for probably like the next like 15, 20 minutes because, like, fuck, guys, like, that was literally the last bit of my money. I don't even know how I'm gonna pay rent this month. Like, I I'm down to my last couple $100. I don't know where the next deal is coming from. I'm stressed out. I'm questioning, is real estate even for me? Should I even be doing this stuff? Like, am I built for this? And man, like, by the way, guys, like, I have not told anybody that story. Like, this is like Luciano doesn't even know that, like, I sat in my bedroom, like, and he was in the room next to me, in the office next to me, and I just sat there crying. And here's what I learned though as a lesson. This is so valuable, and I'm grateful that situation happened because obviously I later I did recover. I put my head down, I worked, and I was able to produce. However, the lesson I learned was one, your faith and your word will be tested. See, everybody says they would do the right thing, right? And like this is hopefully it doesn't sound like I'm on a high horse or I'm standing on my soapbox. I really want to speak this from a place of preparing you for your test when your test arrives. That everybody says that they would be this type of person or that type of person should the situation ever arise, right? It's kind of like your friend who's like, man, I'd mess those guys up. Like if someone stepped to me in a club, like they don't want to step to me. And then it happens, and then that person freezes, right? Like they don't fight or flight. They literally just freeze in the moment. And I was grateful to see that when I was tested in a moment where I wanted to run away, like, guys, I wanted to run away. I wanted to hang up the phone. I didn't want, he was yelling at me. I didn't want to be yelled at. And I also didn't want to lose the money because I really needed it. And I'm grateful to see that under all of that stress and under that pressure. And to me, maybe to you, it's not a stressful situation, but to me, that was some of the most stressful conversation I ever had. That was a lot of pressure. I appreciated seeing that I stuck to my morals, that I operated with integrity, although I wavered, although there was doubt. And in fact, the doubt is the thing that gave me the confirmation that I would stick to my guns. Doubt is an opportunity for your faith to be tested and grown. And so the lesson here is honor your word, honor your values, and understand your values will be tested. Understand your faith will be tested, and they need to be, not for anybody else, but for you to know who you are. See, I now know without a shadow of a doubt, I am who I say I am. I don't need your approval. I don't need you to co-sign it. I'm good. Like, there's a lot of things I do need work on and still in my life. There's a lot of other things I'm still progressing on in my life. But as far as me knowing that I am the man that I say I am, that my integrity is intact, I'm good on that. I don't need any additional cosigns. Okay. So that's lesson number 2. Now, what's up, Brenda? Good to see you inside here. Lesson number 3. And let me take a minute to look at the chat because I sometimes get so into what I'm saying. I don't look over at the chat. So I see, ooh, we got Tamara inside here. What's up, Tamara? I think that's what scares me about taking those first big steps. I got 2 kids counting on me. Absolutely. It is scary. And it's funny because that comment right there is actually going to lead me into my next point. And guys, by the way, I don't know, like my screen sometimes shows my camera glitching, but it looks like I'm not glitching right now. So hopefully it stays that way. But this second lesson is funny enough. It almost sounds like contradictory to my first lesson, which is the first lesson of knowing the season you're in and playing to your season. But then there's a lesson here, which is don't wait too long to expand yourself. Don't wait too long to hand off work and to delegate to a teammate. And I think about this from hiring my first VA ever. This was now back in I want to say near the end of 2020. I'm wholesaling, I'm cold calling nonstop. I'm like at my mom's kitchen room table on a Google Voice, just hand dialing and calling over and over and over. And it took me 8 months of doing this before I got my very first deal. And so it must have been in 2021 is when I hired my first VA, because even after I got my first deal, I just went right back to hand dialing. I made some money, but I didn't know what to do with it. I was too nervous I wouldn't be able to reproduce it again. So I stored it to the side, which I still think was a good idea. And I just started going back to what had produced that. And I kept going, and it was several months, maybe about 4 months or so before I got my next deal. And then, I made a lot more money on that when I just store it to the side, and I'm still just cold calling, cold calling. And one day my buddy says to me, it's like, hey, bro, why are you cold calling? I'm like, what do you mean? I got to generate leads. He's like, yeah, no, I get that. But, we would have a virtual office and we would all make calls together. And he's like, you're spending a lot of time cold calling, but I could have sworn this week I've already seen you generate like a new 5, 10, 15 leads. Why are you not calling your warm leads? And I was like, well, and the reality is like I froze and I was like, truth is, oh shoot, like I'm actually scared to screw up my warm leads. And I've gotten comfortable doing the job of generating the cold leads that I just want to keep doing this. And I don't want to pass it on to anybody else. And he was saying, like, man, you need to hire somebody to generate those cold leads for you so that you can now work on working the warm leads and getting better at that. And even though he said it to me and logically it made sense, I still went another few months of not listening to that advice and just continuing to cold call, cold call, cold call. And guys, like I was at some point like getting proud about being like, I'm a good cold caller. But like the reality is like cold calling doesn't really need a lot of skill. I hate to say that, but the reality is it's a numbers game because you don't know when a person's going to pick up. You don't know the sort of mood they're going to pick up. And so it really is, you're hoping to catch them at the right time and the right day. And that's it. And you follow the script. That's why anyone can cold call. That's why we can pass it off to somebody across overseas and, pay. It's a $2 an hour task. It really is not a difficult task to do. It just requires consistency. In fact, soon robots will be doing it for us. Like, sorry, not sorry. And so because I was waiting to hand that off, I was too scared to expand myself. I was too scared to take on the next portion of growth. I was holding myself back. And this probably, I want to say, like, this cost me a lot because it cost me in time. It cost me in money. I was afraid to spend the money thinking that I would lose the money, not realizing it would be an investment into the business. It would be an investment that would pay dividends because later when I finally did hire my first VA, what happened was I got to the place where I remember one day I laid down to take a nap. And when I was taking this nap, about 12 o'clock in the afternoon, as I'm drifting off, it occurred to me that my business, while I'm here laying down, is still working for me. It's still going. There's somebody. See, anytime in the past when I would stop, the business came to a screeching halt because I was the business. And so the lesson I learned is you can't wait too long to start handing off and delegating work, because your job is to create a system that is consistently working with or without you. Your job is to create a system that is consistently working with or without you. Now, if you're in that brand new phase and you still need to go and gather your own experience, your own convictions to go and get proof of concept so that you can then be able to hire people with conviction, cool, keep doing that. But don't be afraid to start bringing people onto your team and paint the vision on the fact that this business and this system needs to be able to operate rain or shine, with or without you. Like the US Postal Service, like the mail needs to get there when it needs to get there. Your business needs to operate when it needs to operate, does not stop moving. And so I learned this lesson that when I hired my first VA, here's the interesting thing that occurred that I didn't realize. No one told me. And I'm glad I get to tell you guys this right now. When I brought her on, I was so freaking nervous. I realized when I finally hired her what I was scared of. I was scared that I would have an inability to produce and that I would not be able to make enough business happen to sustain her position, and that she would come on board and I would paint this beautiful vision of where the business is going and what life can be. And then I would ultimately fail her and I would have stolen her time. And if I stole her time, that means I not only stole from her, but I stole from her family. I stole from her kids. I stole from her husband. I stole from the people who were depending on her, who trusted in me to create an opportunity for her to be able to provide for them. And that was a lot of pressure. Still, guys, I still find pressure. Anytime I have to hire somebody, it's a lot of pressure. It's not fun, actually. It really it isn't always fun. But here's the cool thing about it. Pressure is a privilege. And so with that pressure, here's what started to happen. It started to make me step up and discover a new gear. I started to discover this new need and necessity to go out and produce. And wow, I didn't realize how that was missing. So some of you, for example, you have kids and you're looking at your kids as, man, like if I didn't have them around, this would be so much easier. That's what you think. But the reality is the reason you're wanting to push so hard is because of those kids. It's because of your wife. It's because of your sick parents. It's because of your financial situation. See, the things that you think have been anchors in your life are actually the fuel. Those are the things giving you the reason to get up and to keep going. And so I learned that lesson. And so don't wait too long to invite people into the journey. Don't wait too long to invite people into the vision and to start handing off pieces of the vision for them to help you build. Okay. Now, this next lesson, let me get a sip of water. Is this helpful for y'all? Are you guys getting any value from this? And if you're on the Instagram, come over to the YouTube. I don't think I finished setting up. Did I make the automation go live? I'm supposed to have an automation on my Instagram that would. Yep. See, look at that. It's in draft mode. All right. So I just made the automation on my Instagram live. So if you DM me the word YouTube, it will send you a link to the YouTube so that you can come over. I'd rather have you guys on YouTube versus Instagram because when you're on YouTube, I can see these comments, right? Like I can actually pull you up. I can see Raphael saying that fire under your butt. Raphael knows about that. Raphael has employees in his business. So he knows all about that. All right. Let's see. What do we got? D Cornell. It's like we all go through the same emotions in the biz. Guys, real estate, entrepreneurship, it is personal development on steroids, and personal development is all about you versus you. What made me go live today? Is this going to be a regular thing? All right. So what made me go live this morning was the fact that the daily dial did not happen this morning. So the daily dial, the West Coast daily dial is not happening for the next few weeks. And so I know some people rely on the Mindset Mondays. I wanted to make sure that they're still getting their dose of that. And these 12 o'clocks, these are going to be a weekly occurrence. So this is now the time slot for the Into the Mind podcast. There are going to be some weeks where it's going to be hanging out with me solo. Then there are going to be other weeks where it is going to be me and a guest, and I'll be interviewing podcast style some of my favorite entrepreneurs, people that I personally have wanted to talk to and connect with, or people who are worth the listen, worth the follow. So, Anthony, expect to see more of this. If you guys are getting value from this, real quick, do me a favor. Go ahead and hit the like button right now. It helps the algorithm out. And if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel as of yet, please do me a favor and hit subscribe so that you can be aware. Next to or tomorrow, you already know we got the Think Big podcast happening at 5 o'clock Arizona time. All right, but let's jump back into it. Brenda, love and appreciate you as well. Steven says, awesome. Love it. All right. So let's get back into it. And Lisa says, this is great. Thank you, Lisa. All right. This next lesson is, I've got it written down over here. This next lesson is learning to trust your intuition. Okay. So what happened was when I stepped into this world of entrepreneurship, I am starting to get around new people who are talking differently, who are thinking differently, who are, my world is being expanded. And so it's a lot of stimulus, a lot of new stimulus. Imagine going to a new country and like there's new smells and new sights and new languages. And so it's all coming in all at once. And there's a bit of sensory overload. And so what was happening is in the early season, I'm getting this bit of sensory overload. I mean, I'm on constant Zooms and I'm in these group chats and I'm meeting new people. And I'm in the Facebook groups and I'm engaging and we're DMing and we're setting up one-on-one calls. And, it's a lot. And I remember one gentleman, I'm not going to say his name because it's not necessary for his name to be brought up. But this individual was a part of one of the same real estate communities that I was in. Now, when I first met him, I had a gut feeling, like an intuition that there was something a little bit off about this guy. This something that it just didn't feel right. And I remembered one day like sitting with that feeling and thinking like, what is this? But because everything was so new and there were people inside of the community who I believed had credibility due to their status, due to their name, due to what they've done in the past, that they were saying this guy's good. I'm thinking like, well, maybe this guy is good. And maybe this feeling I'm feeling is I actually just don't understand what this feeling is. It's a new feeling. And maybe this is what it feels like to meet people at this caliber and at this level. And so I misdiagnosed my own intuition, telling myself that this is what a successful person feels like, right? Because I had never been around this many successful people. And this is just another brand of success, if you will. Like that's this individual's brand of success. And so I start to get to know him and I really start getting closer to the guy. And the guy helped me out in a multitude of ways. I mean, he helped me with sales. He helped me with hosting Zooms. He helped me with a lot of different things. And I started to learn from him and gather from him. But then later down the road, he unfortunately did some really unforgivable things where he borrowed people's money and did not pay them back. He was saying that he was using it for deals and unfortunately was bankrolling his lifestyle. There were some inappropriate things found on his computers and such. And so the guy, unfortunately, was a bad apple. And what was interesting, what I learned by that discovery was my intuition is always right. So is yours. Our intuition. See, I had allowed logic to override the GPS that God put inside each of us. Like God gave us this perfect GPS that guides us to where we want to go, and it's called your intuition. And oftentimes we will override that intuition with our logic, with the information, the knowledge that we have personally gathered and vetted, and we use our own understanding. We rely on our own understanding. And here's the reality: our own understanding is faulty. It's faulty. I mean, if you need any evidence that our own understanding is faulty, just remember that there's a group of people out there who believe the earth is flat. And like it's not a joke, they genuinely believe the earth is flat. And by the way, I've watched some of those like flat earth videos. 'Cause I was like, what do they see? Like, how does someone conclude this? And guess what? Those videos, I can see how if I watched one of those videos first before going to school, I too would also believe the earth is flat. Because our logic, our minds can be so easily corrupted and so easily led to believe a lie. But your intuition reads vibration. It speaks vibration. It speaks frequency. And frequency cannot lie. Vibration cannot lie. It's like math. Math cannot lie. 2 plus 2 is always going to be 4, no matter how you slice it. Now, you might argue that, well, you might use a different language. And so the number you say isn't 4, it's another number. But at the end of the day, two things added with another two things will equal four things. The math can't lie. Vibration cannot lie. So when your intuition speaks, listen and obey. Listen and obey. And so I learned that lesson I wouldn't even say like the hard way, but I had started to associate myself with this person and get real close. And luckily I was able to walk away from that relationship without my reputation being tarnished, without any negative long-term ramification. In fact, it was a blessing in disguise because again, it taught me to always listen to my intuition. It gave final confirmation that a person's reputation, the things that they do, none of that stuff means anything to me. This is why, by the way, sometimes I gotta say this, like a lot of you guys are inside of communities. And once you get into this community and you see somebody else who's also in that same community and who has the brand, you automatically give them validation. You stop vetting them. That's a stupid decision, in my opinion. Here's my question. If you went to Harvard, would you automatically assume every other person at Harvard is a good, trustworthy person? Or would you still continue to vet them and you would recognize that Harvard is a good place to potentially meet good, trustworthy, ambitious people? Right? You would assume that this is a place that gathers more of the people I want to be with, but I'm not going to naturally assume every single person here is good. And so the same thing happens inside of these communities. And you've got to learn how to trust your intuition, because also recognize that what might be good for one person isn't necessarily good for you. What relationship might serve one might not necessarily serve you in the same way. But you've got to be aware, self-aware of you. Know thyself. Listen to your intuition speaks to you differently than mine. You will never be able to understand my intuition. I'll never be able to understand yours. But that's not our job. Our job is to understand our own intuition, check in with your own guidance, and then to obey that divine intuition, that divine guidance. Yeah, guys, I understand. I told you we're going to be talking about business, and I'm telling you this right now. The individuals I know that operate at the highest level of business, they have learned to trust above all others. They've learned to trust their own intuition and their own instincts. All right, we're back. Okay, cool. Brenda says come back. Okay, cool. All right, guys, sorry about that. Internet connection definitely bounced out there for a second, but we are officially back. So I don't know what the last thing you caught was, but hopefully you understand that you've got to listen to your vibration, that you've got to listen to your intuition, that you've got to listen to your frequency. Now, next big lesson that I learned inside of these last 5 years is be cautious with who you compare yourself to. You've heard the saying that comparison is the thief of all joy. And it's true because what happens is in business, it's easy in entrepreneurship, especially this day and age with social media, it's easy to start comparing yourself to people that you don't even necessarily want to be like. But the only reason you're comparing yourself to them is because you have now a gateway into their life through your cell phone, through social media. You're now more and hyper aware of everything that they're up to and everything that they're doing. Where in the past, you would not have been able to know what they're up to every waking moment like you do now. You have access to our stories, you have access to our newsletters, you have access to our emails, which is a double-edged sword. I love the amount of information we have access to. However, we have to be responsible with it because we can inadvertently find ourselves comparing ourselves to individuals that we don't even want to be doing things that we don't even want to do. I found this happening to myself where I was in a season of chasing entrepreneurship. And when I was chasing entrepreneurship, what happened was because of the people I had around me and the people I was paying attention to, I started desiring to do what they were doing, even though it was never my personal goal. I had never actually set up and set out to do these things personally. Like if you left me alone, stranded on an island, and asked me to write down a list of all the things I wanted to do, some of the tasks I found myself doing weren't the things that I wanted to be doing. And I had to check myself with why am I where did these thoughts come from? Where did these desires come from? And here's the truth. If you can't tell me where your desires came from, if you can't tell me where your goals came from, if you can't tell me why you want what you want, I can promise you this. You're not chasing after what you want. You're chasing after what someone else wants. You're chasing after what somebody has influenced you, somebody has manipulated you, somebody has sold you on an idea, whether positive or negative, doesn't matter to me, but you're chasing somebody else's vision of success. And that's a dangerous place to find yourself in because what happens is you're now attaching yourself to the whims of somebody else that you cannot control. You don't have control over their desires, over their intentions, over their future. The only thing you have control over is yourself. And so I want you to start to ask yourself, who are you comparing yourself to? Oftentimes, you might be making progress in your own life, but you fail to realize it because your attention is on somebody else and the distance they ran, not the distance you covered. And it's this understanding. I learned this from studying Tony Robbins. He said happiness is often found not in the things you have, not even in the things you accomplished. It's not even like, guys, achieving your goals isn't how you get happiness. I can tell you that right now from personally having achieved some of the biggest goals that I set for myself. I remember the time I closed my first like $40,000 check, and it was supposed to be this, open up the trumpets to heaven moment, but that's not what happened. All right. You said I'm freezing. Let me know if I'm freezing, guys. Hopefully I'm not. On my side, it's showing me that I am fully here. So I'm going to keep going because on my end, it's showing that I'm not freezing. But I remember closing my first $40,000 deal, having that check hit my bank account. And I remember that morning waking up and feeling so freaking empty inside. And I was like, why do I feel empty? What is this? I had achieved one of the biggest goals. In fact, my goal was to make a $20,000 check. Like that was like, well, first it was to make a $10,000 check, then it was to do a $20,000 check, and now I just more than doubled my goal. Why am I not finding joy? Why am I not finding happiness? What the hell is going on? Why? And what I start to understand, and I came to learn this, is happiness is found on what your focus is. Where's your attention going? Because in that moment where I had $40,000 coming into my bank account, here's the reality. My focus and my attention had lost a target. There was no focus. There was no attention. I didn't know where to direct myself. I didn't know where to direct my being. And this lack of a clear target, lack of a clear positive target, but lack of a target in general led me to feeling to just drifting. And I remember just drifting through that day. And although externally, circumstantially, I should have been happy, there was no joy to be found with me. Not until later that day when I found myself walking just aimlessly. I came across a homeless man and I just asked him if he was hungry, if he wanted a meal. And I took him into a sandwich shop. And for $12, I bought all the happiness a man could buy. I bought this man a meal. And for $12, my attention was no longer focused on selfishly me. It was focused on helping another human being. It was see, your attention is what brings happiness. And when you start comparing yourself, where's your attention? Your attention is going into what the other person has and what you lack. That's what your attention is on. And when you start focusing on lack, when you start focusing on limitation, when you start focusing on things outside of your reach and outside of your control, this is where you're going to find yourself in this place of desperation. You're going to find yourself in this place of depression and destitution. Instead, you want to start to bring your attention back to the things that you do have control over. First, focus on gratitude, right? Like, focus on gratitude. Focus on the things you do have. Focus on the things you have accomplished. Focus on the gain, not the gap, right? You've already crossed so much. You've already think about where you started and where you are today. Think about how much you've accomplished since then and start to bring your attention back to the things that can be positive in your life. And when you start to compare, if you're going to compare yourself to the things that you actually do desire in life and the people that you do want to be like, the people who have the sort of values and the sort of lifestyle and the sort of ambition and the sort of life that you want to live. But be cautious with comparing yourself to people who you don't even actually want to be like. And the only reason you're comparing yourself to them is because they have done a great job at putting themselves in front of you, and you have done a poor job at auditing your attention. You've done a poor job at auditing your attention. And so I had to learn that lesson for myself, where many of you know me now, right? Like, if any of you know, my phone is constantly in do not disturb, right? Like, you guys saw like my phone. How many notifications do you see right now? Zero. There are never notifications on the front of my phone, ever. The only way for me to get notifications is for me to open up the app and to go to where it is I'm looking for something. And then only the notifications that I personally have turned on and subscribed to will be shown to me. I audit where my attention is. By the way, if you guys get value from me, here's what I would say for your YouTube, right? So that your YouTube shows you more of this and less of what you don't want to see. If this is something you were like, all right, I'm getting value from this, make sure you turn my notification on. But if you're not getting value, if this doesn't resonate with you, turn my notification off so that you don't see my stuff. I'm okay losing viewers. I'm okay losing followers. I'm okay losing subscribers if it means your life gets better. And I only want the people on the channel who get value, who resonate, because this is my like, you guys are my audience. You guys are my community. You guys are the sort of people I want to hang out with, because these are the sort of conversations I like to have. This is what I think about, and this is how I help people. So I want the people that selfishly are getting value from this, because then I feel better about being able to provide things of use. All right, let's go through one more lesson here. Also, I probably shouldn't be throwing my pen away, but accidentally did that. Let me see what Anthony said. Coming from a park bench 14 years ago helps you to appreciate everything you receive. But once you receive, never forget to give thanks for how you got there. So true. So true. All right, let's go through here. Final lesson, because I think we only have 7 minutes left. Next week, we almost had Caroline come on, but she is traveling right now, and she is in a place where the internet connection apparently is just as bad as mine, because my internet connection is not looking good today. We're gonna have to figure out how to get this laptop hardwired. We gotta figure out how to get this house hardwired. But once we get the house hardwired, we can get the laptop hardwired. But here's the last thing I want to talk about. I have a list of lessons here, but this is going to be the one I'm going to skip down to lesson number 7, because I wish maybe selfishly I had bumped into this lesson, a few years ago on Instagram or on YouTube, or read a book that just would have caught me at the right time to help me to save some time and save some stress and save some grief. which is be aware of keeping up with the Joneses. I found myself in, I would say, late 2022, early 2023, starting to perform better financially. I was getting more deals. Our flippings, our business was starting to get more traction. We were making more money. I wasn't down to my last couple of pennies anymore. And so as a result, this thing called lifestyle creep started to happen, unbeknownst to me. And what is lifestyle creep? Lifestyle creep is, imagine when you're first getting started off in business and you're thinking to yourself, if I could just make $5,000 a month, like my expenses are only $3,000 a month. I'd be able to save and put away $2,000 every single month. Like I'd be I don't need to make a lot. I just need 5,000 a month. And then what happens? You start making 5,000 a month. Somehow you're like, this isn't enough, man. Like I don't like, we just have so many bills. If I could just make $10,000 a month, then I would be so like golden. I'd be perfect. I mean, that's a six-figure salary. All I need, if I could just make $10,000 a month, I'd be perfect. Then you start making $10,000 a month, and then what happens? If I could just be making 15,000, 15 to 20, I mean, like right now things are tight. I just don't have enough. Um, you know, and here's the interesting thing. When a person stops and says, "Well, where's the money going?" Well, what do you mean? Yeah, well, where's the money going? I'm not sure. What do you mean you're not sure? Yeah, I mean, it's just like at the end of the month, like after all the bills are paid and everything, like there's just usually a couple dollars left. Like there really isn't anything left. And like if I could just make more. And people start thinking that if I just make more money, then my problem will be solved. Well, here's a great lesson to learn and to be reminded that money does not solve your money problems. Money does not solve your money problems because it's a financial behavior that needs correcting, not the amount of money you have available. Because, and I believe I covered this maybe 2 weeks ago on a live. I was doing a coaching call, and I covered this 2 weeks ago where we talked about financial profiles. And ultimately, there were three financial profiles. And I remind myself of this regularly. And my goal is always to act in the third and best financial profile, because the first financial profile is that of a deficit, which means I spend more than I make. If I make a dollar, I figure out how to spend a dollar 25. If I make $100, I somehow spend 115. And so if a person operates from a deficit, here's the reality. There's no helping you. Not until you change, because no amount of money will allow you to grow financially, because the more money you get, the more in debt you get. Right? Like think about lotto winners. Lotto winners, actually their lives are worse off after they win the lottery than before, because before they won the lottery, they could only get themselves into debt at at a certain rate. But then with this large inflow, they were able to massively shove themselves deeper into debt because they are deficit individuals. They spend more than they have. And so that's one way. And usually what are they spending on? It's being spent on, it's not on investments. It's spent on just lifestyle, spent on keeping up with the Joneses, it's spent on just having things like buying liabilities, buying crap. Okay. Then you got this is where a majority of the people live at. They live in the break even, at least the majority of middle class Americans. They live in the break even, which is you spend just as much as you make. For every dollar you make is a dollar you spend. Now you're break even, so you don't feel as bad. Maybe sometimes you even got a couple pennies to put away, and you remind yourself, well, at least I'm not that deficit spender over there who's just financing the lifestyle fully. But to a degree, these break even individuals are financing the lifestyle because they're putting it on credit card. And then what's happening, they're just paying the credit cards off at the end of the month, but they never really get out of debt. So they spend the money before they have the money, and then they use the money they get to pay back the loan they borrowed on their credit card to finance the lifestyle. How do I know about this? I did it. I did it. I lived that life. I lived both lives. I lived the deficit life and I lived the break even life. And here's the crazy thing about those two lives. it's not even like a conscious decision. You're not going out there and saying, "Oh, great, I made $10. Let me spend 12. Oh, great, I made $10. Let me get rid of all of it." It happens as a result of this lifestyle creep, of this keeping up with the Joneses, of your friends wanna go out, so you say, "Let's go out." Your friends wanna buy this, so you say, "All right, let's buy this." And what often happens is you're thinking, "Well, this is what normal people do," and you don't even realize the behind the scenes because most people aren't having conversations about what your financial situation is, and you don't know that your friends are also financing this lifestyle. So you think that you're just doing what you need to do to fit in with the people that so that you can have the same sort of lifestyle, not realizing how they're creating this illusion of a lifestyle. And so then you come across the people that operate from a surplus. Now, the surplus people, though, that's where you want the surplus mindset, which is for every dollar you earn, you only spend 80 cents. In other words, for every dollar you earn, 20 cents stay with you. You make a million and you only spend 800,000. There's a $200,000 surplus. There's profit at the end. And what's interesting is it's not even profit at the end, it's profit at the beginning because these people learn to take their profit first. They learn that when they earn that bit of money, that they immediately, before it can get lost to lifestyle creep, before it can get lost to keeping up with the Joneses, they immediately move it and press it over here to the side. And I personally call it my personal wealth chest, Marlon's personal bank. And the money that goes into there is like the money going into Fort Knox. It cannot. It's like President Trump recently said with Bitcoin, like this is gold. It is not to be spent. We would never sell it. Never. I'm never selling that money over there. That money is my wealth fund. It's never being sold ever because it's a training. It's a discipline that we're training. And if you're like, but Marlon, I need more money. Awesome. Now we can go make more money because we operate from a surplus. And so this was a lesson I had to learn, and I realized what was ever preventing me from operating from that surplus. It was never about the amount of money I was making. It was always about the people I was hanging out with and my inability to remain true and authentic to my personal situation. And it was me just being nervous about being judged, right? Like, hey, you can't afford this. Oh, aren't you making more money though? Aren't you? Isn't your business going well? It's like, hey, yeah, it is, but like, I got a plan. The same way you wouldn't feel embarrassed about if you were dieting, why do you get embarrassed about the fact that you're budgeting that you because like what is a budget? I think when people hear budget, they think poor. But do you know the wealthiest people in the world budget? Because all budget is me simply saying, I am intentional about where my financial allocation is going. I'm intentional. Guys, like, what do you think a family office does? A family office is a wealthy it's for the wealthiest of the wealthy, and they budget your money, and they say your money is going to go into these investments. Your money is going to go into these ventures. Your money is spoken for. Your money has a job, and this money you can go and spend and do whatever. It's a budgeting. It's allocating of the money. So if you want to play keeping up with the Joneses and keep up with people who are financing their lifestyle on debt and credit cards, by all means, but at least just make it as a conscious decision. Don't do it unconsciously like I was doing. Now I'm more conscious, and I'll tell people like there are times, guys, I'll go out. I'm now at the season of my life where I'm a young man and I'm making more money than I've ever made each year. My finances are getting a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. We're growing exponentially, and I am back in a season where even though I'm making good money, I am back in the season of budgeting. Where I will say no, like I literally had this happen. I had a conversation a little while ago. Someone asked, like, "Hey, can I get money?" And I said to them, I was like, "Hey, I don't have any money to give you right now." They're like, "But what do you mean? Aren't you?" And I was like, "Yeah, no, like all of my money is like what I do now is like when it all comes in, it already has a job, so it's already spoken for. So unless new money comes in that I'm unaware of, like this money, everything it's already spoken for. It goes to my investments. It goes to my company. It goes to like everything's already pushed out, and I don't want to keep a lot of money on me. Good buddy of mine. If you guys ever get an opportunity, go and listen to a podcast I did about 4.5 years ago with Alon Avgi. We talked about this. Alon, great friend of mine out in New York, young man, 29, almost 30 years old, already with over $100 million of properties under his personal company, under his assets under management by him, his company personally, not a manager, but like ownership. And what was interesting is we talked about, it was like, hey, how much money do you have in your wallet right now or like in your checking account? And it was like, I don't know, like 27 bucks. A dude worth millions of dollars $27 in his checkings account, right? And same rationale that I have. He said, what happens is when I allocate and I put the money out, the money is already spoken for. It already has a job. And so what it makes me do is it prevents me from ever getting too comfortable, and it keeps me humble and it keeps me hungry. And so, guys, I hope you found some value in this session, in this breakdown on some of the lessons I've learned over the last 5 years. I had more lessons to go. Clearly, I like to speak on these things. I get a little passionate. Also, our internet connection came down. So if you got value from this, make sure you hit the like and you subscribe. Guys, also, another thing to know, I do this. I teach on mindset, on entrepreneurial principles, on how to rewire yourself for success. Because a lot of success, if you remember last week, I had Bobby and Caroline on, and Bobby sold his company for I believe it was 9 figures. Caroline is growing her company like wildfire right now. And we spoke about how mindset is the most critical. It's 90% of entrepreneurship. All right, it's working on your own personal development. It's working on your mindset. So if you're somebody that is feeling stuck right now, if you're somebody that feels like you already have all the resources, but you have not been able to produce the results, I'm going to challenge you to click on the link that I have in the description to fill out an application to work with me. I do high performance coaching. I do a reset of your mindset operating system so that we can get to the version of you that's the 2.0 version of you. That's the next level version of you, the version of you that has better habits, the version of you that creates results. If you need help creating and unlocking that person, I'm going to challenge you to fill out the application below. I only work with 10 people at a time. And so it is limited. You're going to go through a review process. You're going to speak with either myself or someone on my team as a discovery call to see if you're a good fit. But if you are, this could be arguably the most important investment you ever make, because if this ain't right, the rest doesn't work. So, guys, I appreciate you all for being here. Hope you got some value out of this. Share this video with a friend if you know that it will benefit them. And last thing, Tuesday, tomorrow, we got the Think Big podcast at 5 o'clock Arizona. You guys are going to see a lot more of me on lives. So I look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. And for the folks on Instagram, see you later. Peace out, y'all.